Welcome to episode 2 of Titled, a VCT podcast. First off, thanks to all the fans for a great reception on the first episode. A bit better than we expected, to be honest. Quite happy with that.
Not a bad turnout for two jobless bums, to be honest.
Yeah, something like that. Keep the comments coming. We'd love to hear how you're thinking on the show. Obviously, we're looking to do this every week, basically, for the VCT season. Just keep working on it, keep building on it. Yeah. Not much to say. Again, thanks. Let's get right into it. So, week 2 of VCT action. But there is actually a big story I think we need to talk about first. And it's on the format changes. So, if you haven't seen these, I'm not going to go into full detail on them. But the short version is Riot is moving every single region to a open qualifier format. Essentially, you're going to have OQs, you're going to have cups, which are short-term tournaments which replace the current league structure and qualify you to land. And then Masters and Champions are roughly the same. And it's basically a push towards an open circuit, whereas obviously it's been since 2022, since 2023, starting a closed circuit. And like I said, we were both around pre- and post-franchising, right? Franchising was always a little bit... from a competitive standpoint coming in, it was kind of a necessary evil in my opinion, because the pre-2023 circuit just didn't really give you enough stability to basically do anything Valorant as a full-time thing. I don't know what your experience was at the time, and you were like working with me at the time, right? So probably the same. But...
I would say it's a necessary evil. It's like the orgs love it, the big ones especially. They love franchising. They love the revenue share model. Anyone who's in it loves it, basically. Everyone who's out of it hates it. It's naturally how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, you go to an open circuit, you do create more opportunities for Tier 2, but then it's a case of, well, like, how far can you really stick in this? How long can you keep doing this, justifying it to yourself as a player, as a coach, whatever? They actually have said, I don't remember who said that, I didn't see... It was somebody who was like an ex-senior ops guy on the Riot League side. They said, we wanted to do this in 2022, but we weren't able to because the visa situation at that point was too difficult. There were a bunch of other, like, logistical problems around it. Obviously, people remember you remember this in the first year, there was a concern that half the good players in Europe were Russian, and we didn't even know if we could get them into Berlin, let alone having a tour over Europe. There's a lot of stuff like that, basically. I mean, to be fair, I think... Well, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I think it's probably fair to say they've been disappointed with how Tier 2 has developed under the current system. The viewership in places like Brazil, Spain, France, Turkey, it's been healthy. It's kind of been sliding backwards. It's never really got to the point of these regions being self-sustaining. Like, obviously, you have a lot of familiarity with the Turkish teams, for example, right? So, I mean, how would you say it's been kind of going?
Turkey Tier 2 died with franchising, basically. Not died in the sense... I mean, Tier 2 has been really good in terms of producing talent, in my opinion. We haven't really had a lack of talent production. In fact, I think it's maybe even been better than the previous system or the open system in terms of being able to find and train talent. However, the viewership died a lot. I think in Turkey, when I was back in Fireflux, we were getting like 100k on some games. Whereas now, obviously, the franchise teams are getting still very good good viewership, and probably a lot of the viewers did go with BBL, but it obviously took a massive hit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it, right? You're taking the big orgs out the local circuits, which you kind of are putting them back in by having it as an OQ system almost.
Especially with Turkey being a singular region, right?
With Turkey it's going to be a big one because it is, like you say, one region for OQs. I mean, stuff like Spanish viewership has suffered clearly. France, I think, has kept up on the viewership, but still, obviously, you've taken a hit there. Brazil, I know, is a place where it's massively just not worked franchising the Tier 2 model. They took the big orgs out, and they've got decent orgs still in there, but nobody's staying there for long. They haven't really got the viewership. It hasn't been like in the league where Brazil was bad for a long time in the league, but still got the viewership, still got this sort of thing. But yeah, it's clear. It's an understandable move. I think looking forward, a lot's going to rely on third-party tournament organisers for how good this works out. Because, okay,
I think so too.
They've portrayed this as, there's more games that matter, more tournaments, etc. In terms of the Riot tournaments, we're getting less Valorant. Let's not pretend otherwise. They're saying, 20 tournaments a year. It's like, okay, well, that's replacing the leagues. OQs are always weird to cover from any perspective, from fan perspective, from media perspective, or whatever. The Cups are shorter versions of the league. There's no way the Cups are going to run 7 weeks or whatever.
My guess will be that it will be like a classic Riot LAN where it takes about 4 weeks for it to fully play out.
Yeah, maybe even less, maybe even 2 or 3 weeks. It's less Valorant. It's in shorter spurts. Master and Champions are the same, but we're getting a lot less Valorant played in this new system, unless this then comes with essentially a third-party TO rebuilding of the Tier 2 scene on not like a national or transnational basis. Feels a little bit like Riot's trying to make the baby bird fly a little bit. Same's happening in League, by the way, per rumours. And to be fair, I guess if you're going to do it, this is a good time to do it for Valorant, because we're 6 years into the game's lifespan, right? This kind of tends to be the point in esport where you figure out if this esport's going to be able to go 15 years or if it's just going to die in the next couple of years, right? It seems like very bizarre the idea that Valorant could die in the next couple of years, but it's not impossible. It's that we see like a massive decline, right? So this is kind of where you need to find out, is this going to work and how can we relate to it on Riot's level? So a lot of unknowns. I don't want to go into too much detail further on it, basically, but yeah, we'll see how it sort of develops. Any other thoughts on it?
I think EWC, if EWC is also open, that's a big one, because that adds a 4th tournament, and also just EWC being open is a huge thing. I think, as you said, if we see TOs, other big TOs, ESLs, Blasts, these kinds of TOs, PGL perhaps, maybe come in and actually run Valorant tournaments, not necessarily even Tier 2 tournaments, but big tournaments, then I think this system can be amazing. I do think competitively it's what everyone wants anyways, but I think it's going to depend a lot on the details. I think it's in the details whether this is actually going to be a good thing or not. But I think it's good. I think it's going to break down a lot of the negative parts about franchising that exists right now in terms of maybe grouping between certain people and maybe that level of, I don't want to say nepotism, because I don't think hard nepotism is really, I don't really think it's necessarily the big thing, but I think, there's obviously a lot of cliquey activity within franchising, and I think it removes a lot of that. I really hope we see where, the 8 remaining partner teams, it'll be funny if like 5 of them just completely fail and get exposed by this. I mean, I kind of want to watch it all burn, so it'll be funny if they do all burn, but I think we'll see. I mean, it's in the details whether it'll actually be successful or not.
I mean, not the many teams that we saw. It was pretty funny. Some of the things we saw happen with the not partner teams, but the teams that were like in pole position in like early Valorant 2021, and then just had horrible 2022s where they just went.
Mate, it was the best thing ever when like you saw Heretics get smacked out by like Eve Kalash or something. You know what I mean? Like we used to live for these moments. So I'm excited that that's gonna come back, because now every match is a hate watch. Because if you're Fnatic, or I don't know, especially for Fnatic when they're struggling against obviously one of the best teams in the world, by the way, don't get me wrong, but they do seem to struggle against shit teams or teams that are necessarily not on their level. So if I see, Fnatic struggling in those open qualifiers like they used to back in the day, then it's just going to be funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fair enough, yeah. Okay. I mean, we're moving on swiftly from laughing at the hypothetical idea of teams doing badly in OQs. We still do have VCT for now, so let's talk about that. We're going to start with...
If we must.
Yeah, go.
If we must talk about it,
If we must. Okay. So we're going to start with same format as last week. We're going to breeze through the 4 regions. It's now 4 regions. We've got so many results on the board. And then we're going to focus in on a few different games, and we'll have like a little section for you at the end. We're not going to spoil what that is yet, but you see it fine now, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so going on to EMEA. Start out with Giants beat Pacific. Bit of a bounce back from last week. Not too much to say on that. Ara had a really good second map on Pearl. Pacific played pretty poorly, him to be fair, but we did kind of see what made him great for a couple of months last year, where he takes 1 or 2 timings, and then he's a safe pair of hands on the other side of the map. His team could play away from him. It's all good. So, good performance there against one of the weaker teams in the league, to be fair still. I mean...
Isn't that the first map that Pacific won, by the way, in franchising?
It might be, actually, yeah. It's probably...
I'm pretty sure kickoff was all 2-0s.
No, I think... I'm going to check this. I think they won against... I want to say they took a map of BBL, like, surprisingly.
Oh, they might have, actually. I think I remember the same thing.
Yeah, let's see. Pacific... No, they took a map of Giants last time, and they took a map of BBL. They took a bit of BBL.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not, it's still still an achievement, to be fair. But it's I mean, Pacific are Pacific. I think they're gonna have that apex syndrome where they're gonna be bomb feeders. It's hard to see them getting out of that rhythm, unfortunately. BBL EF 2-0 EF. This was obviously a surprise. To be fair, I think this was two things. One, it's one of those series where everything goes right for one team. They were plus 16 on first kills, 29-13, which is obviously just huge if you're just killing them first every single time. That's partially a game plan thing. That's also partially just shooting better, to be fair. The other thing, I think, to be fair, this is like 5 players who had a lot of experience playing against BBL. The hardest thing, I speak from experience here, the hardest thing with playing against BBL is just getting a feel for how they move and how they peak angles, what timings they take, that sort of thing. And to be clear, this isn't a thing like, these players and this team happen to be better than BBL, like could beat BBL domestic play, because they were like 1-18 between Pacific and EF against them, right? But it is, to be fair, like it's easier to play than most teams. Like I don't know what you think about the matchup.
I think this is like classic regional, a regional matchup where you have to remember with every single regional matchup, and when I say regional, I mean Turkey region.
Yeah.
When you see teams that come up together or in the same ERL, for example, it's always going to be a lot easier for, let's say, a team like EF to beat BBL than it might be for a team like Fnatic, for example, or Vitality, because they've played against them so many times. They're so aware of each other. They're friends. They all, go out for a kebab after the game or whatever. And so it's super easy for them to understand what the other team is doing because they play against each other permanently, right? Yeah. So I think it's more natural that you see these kinds of things. EF, and I will also say when it comes to the Turkish teams against each other, there's a lot of ego involved. So I think that almost benefits teams against BBL. If you play with ego, then it's a lot harder for BBL. I think BBL do a lot better when they're kind of like a shark in the water, right? Chasing little fishes. Yeah. But I do think all those things kind of played a good thing. I think Izzy is playing super well though as well, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's a nice guy, and he's obviously a player who's probably should have got a shot at some point, but it just hasn't ever aligned for him. Yeah. And that's esports. Unfortunately, it's like 3 teams you can join as. I believe his English is still fairly poor, so he has to join a Turkish team, and just isn't the opportunity there. If you don't get one of like the 2 or 3 teams in franchising, that's why people will be happy to see franchising going away to an extent. There will be at least more opportunities. Anyway. Fnatic 2-0 Vitality was expected to be quite a close series. Kind of wasn't. Profik and Yampi had pretty bad games on both maps, if I remember correctly. I do wonder if they're going to have to adjust how they're playing a little bit. One thing I did notice was they were being very, very conservative with how they played flanks. They weren't really like taking many roams, all that sort of stuff. I think probably, particularly if you're going to play with Profik, you kind of need to play a little more expansive. You need to let him roam a bit. Like he was on the Harbour on Breeze as well, which is very rough to play. And like he was playing pretty well, but it was clear like this is not like a natural fit for him. He kind of wants to be the smoker in front of things, not behind people. And Harbour, you kind of always have to be behind people because you need like good angles to the walls and stuff like that. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that series.
Boaster has to have some level of like I don't even know what dark anime magic against Vitality, man. This guy just. Yeah. It doesn't matter who's against, doesn't matter who he has on his team. Every single time, even when we were there, if those games where we should have won and we just lose in the most funniest way possible almost. And this was the same thing where like the last 3 or 4 rounds, suddenly Boaster turns into like a different player where he's 180, one-tapping Durka like mid-flank and winning 1v2 clutches and shit. Like, Boaster's an amazing player. But for some reason against Vitality, he does seem to enjoy those games. So I don't know. Of course, when your IGO enjoys the game, it always seems easier. But there seems to be some mental thing with him where he just is super confident against them.
English versus the French, that's generally gone well, historically speaking. So, French. Yeah, I mean, we're apart from present company accepted, obviously. In any case. So, that's that. Liquid 2-0 against Heretics. I don't think you can judge much off this series, to be fair. I suspect Koshmao's chamber on every map is not going to be the answer to anything because you've just built their entire chamber philosophy seems to be built on leaving the chamber player on an island and accepting bad comms, accepting whatever, as long as you just hold down his side of the map. that is the opposite of what you're going to get with Kosh Maras, where he's never been that player. He's always been very much a secondary duelist sort of player, but he's a player, obviously, the entire point you picked him up is better communication and more in sync with your IGL and all that sort of stuff, right? But you can't make that adjustment in a couple of days in terms of comp, so I get it. I think a lot here will depend on how Woot adjusts to being primary duelist in this team. Obviously, it's kind of a thing we've always had one on off with him, but yeah.
I think it's a good meta for him to be a main, it's a good meta for him to be a duelist because he does have a passive playstyle. And I think he will benefit from having a secondary duelist behind him, but I guess they can't run chamber on every map for that to be the case. So,
yeah, and it depends how much aggression basically you get from Woot. Because Woot has to step up and be more aggressive. Like, you go look at Koshmaros, his old performances in Tier 2, I think he's always been, when he's played duelist, he's playing secondary duelist, and he's always been like, he's not going to get first kills. So he needs to be there. Like, Woot has to basically take space a lot more aggressively than he's always used to. So that's an adjustment. We'll talk a little bit more about Mason maybe. And
I will say, just on a side point, that I think, and this is not to flame either side, I think both are amazing, but I think this does show a little bit how much impact MIBR had on that team and how much people didn't realize the things he was doing. Though this guy was just getting hated a lot, and he was mainly used as a scapegoat by the fans, I think, and by the viewers. And I remember watching every single one of their games, especially when they were, going on those second place runs. Yeah. And the things he's doing are amazing, right? He was such a good entry, especially compared to Wu, who's obviously an insane fragger and insane aimer. MIBR was a lot better at actually being able to make that space for his team and be able to double down on it and not being afraid to just run in and go triple negative and, have all these issues. And that does sound like a joke, like, oh, he's going triple negative or double negative, but he has impact. But with MIBR, it actually was the case most of the time. Yeah, he actually was having insane amount of impact.
Super selfless player. And for my money, I think he was the best Neon in the world for like a long time.
I think that's without a doubt. On Neon, I think that's like undisputed. But I think in general, people were just completely underrated. You see how well he's doing on Liquid now, and I don't know. I think he was owed a little bit of respect. So I think maybe this is how people are going to realize it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have to hope. I mean, Liquid, it's an environment where he's able to do a lot. Obviously, it's a lot less structured. To be fair, it feels like it's a lot less. But he's still having a good impact. So it'll be interesting to see how the legacies develop there.
Seems like a good move on his part, though, actually. There's not a lot of players who would do that move just out of nowhere, so I kind of respect it right now.
Yeah, I agree. And Foot Na'Vi 2-1. Kalosh looks a little bit better, but he's obviously still not the guy. Foot looked very good. The visa issues suck for Na'Vi a lot. This might be a split where Na'Vi go like a credible 1-4. Because they got Gentlemates next week. But they got Gentlemates next week, which is, I think, winnable for them, but it's going to be hard if they're still using a sub. And then it's also, how good is Exit going to be when he comes in? Because this guy isn't like, he's like a superstar player, right? It's like, he's still a very unproven talent, I'd say. He's never played outside of MENA. MENA is one of the weaker regions. It has like a lot of problems. We don't know how good this guy's going to be. And when he comes into the team, he has to play against Liquid in the next to last week, which is going to be a very hard match. And then you've got Carmen in the last week. It's very possible. Like, Na'Vi could easily go 1-4, but just have like a very good 1-4, right? Just because we don't know how good Exit's going to be at the end of the day. But we'll see. It might just be an unlucky split for them. Okay, moving on to APAC. So, didn't click. There we go. So, not a huge amount to say a lot about these results here. T1 global RRQ full sense, pretty much as expected. I think people have like a big thing where they like to try to pretend like, the 12th best team in Pacific would beat like the 4th best team in the EMEA, and there is a bit of a gap, to be fair, between like the top 8 and bottom 4. I think in Pacific, I think people make it was to say. I think people are basically making that talking point. I think because it used to be the case in Korean League that people would always make that argument, which wasn't even really true there. Or when those teams played internationally, usually the non-Korean team would still win in those situations. But it's a smart thing you can say that which never ever get tested, right? Because the 8th best team from Pacific isn't going to make it into international. So you can always say that they would beat the 4th best. It's like, are they ever going to play? No, but you look very smart though. Well done. You look very smart. You're glazing Pacific. Yeah, but this impossible matchup. It's like, what if Maradona played George Mikan? Yeah, we never know. We'll never know, bro.
How you just pulled George? How is that the player you pulled? Fucking hell, man.
Yeah. But
Well,
yeah,
that's not playing when you were younger. They don't.
yeah, calm down. But yeah, all those results pretty much as expected. Nothing really rocking the boat or 2-0s. We'll talk more about the Nongshim KRX, DRX, whatever we're calling them now, game later. The second biggest upset of the entire week in all regions, Genji over PRX, which is a kind of weird, right? Because until what? I'm gonna look at the exact record that these teams had, because it's something crazy where Genji just Genji just like Sun PRX they always have historically. Yeah, here we are.
Yeah, this does look like Genji have a bit of a mental thing against them.
Yeah, I mean maybe we shouldn't have been like they've won what? PRX were winning for a while, and then Genji won 6 in a row, including. Oof. I mean, to be fair, 3 of those were non-right tournaments, but even so. And PRX got a big win in the off-season. I mean, maybe this game shouldn't have been a such a 80% chance of PRX as people were saying it either way. I mean, you have to bear in mind Genji have lost 4 of the last 5 VCT games. They lost the DFM, they lost the Global twice. It's a bad record. Ash was back in for Foxy9 this week. I don't feel like that was a determining factor. Ash kind of had a pretty bad series overall. Maybe it might be a case, to be fair, where it is easier to play with Foxy9 and play with Ash than it is Foxy9, because you'll know this, right? A lot of players, particularly Sentinel players, there's a thing with them. Like I've noticed, I'm not going to name other names, but you'll know who I'm talking about. Where teams playing against them, like opposing coaches, opposing players, really fear them. They think they rate them really highly because they're unpredictable. They're kind of hard to read. They like win a lot of rounds on their own. And then the players and coaches on their teams, I'm not going to say hate them, but are a little bit, they're less keen on them. Because that unpredictability is not just for the enemy team, it's for their team as well. So it's a lot harder to play around those guys. I mean, I can think of a few players on that thing. That might be the case with Foxy9 versus Ash, because Foxy9 was definitely a player who, when we played Genji against Soup, he like stood out as, this is a guy who is very unpredictable, creates problems as a result for enemy teams. But I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I'm wondering who you're talking about, though. Maybe say it and bleep it out. But I think, in general, those kinds of players can win you games when you're struggling more just because they have an X factor, basically. It's nice to have an X factor, but it's hard to say what's going on with that carousel, man. It just seems like Foxy9 is out and in every week for a different team.
Yeah, it seems to be the case a lot with some of these. Well, to be fair, I guess that's the case when you have the luxury of having a 7 or 8 man roster. You're going to try and make changes more.
But then I guess it can also turn into kind of what we're seeing with Genji a little bit until this PRX win, where it's just chaos, basically, and they don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. I guess to be fair, once it clicks. So maybe it's worth it for that. Sure. But yeah, that thing, that entire series, Haven was a slugfest. Fracture was a non-map. PRX just won it. Lotus was kind of another non-map. Something open 0 and 10 on map 3. Genji just basically showed what makes them hard to beat fundamentally. They had excellent micro play. PRX, obviously, very big defensive aggression team. Never able to get any value with the defensive aggression. They just basically sit. They'd wait it out. Then they'd maybe get one kill off the aggression. Genji would always find themselves in a better situation after PRX did their push, basically. So I think more than anything else, we maybe underrated Genji a little bit. Maybe they got a little unlucky in some of these games. But it's also just Genji just hyper familiar with the PRX team. And PRX didn't really find anything new into this one. They didn't play horribly, but yeah, just couldn't get through. So that all makes for a huge upset, which I was surprised it was this huge, to be honest. Like in terms of, that's like an implied odds about 20% for Genji to win, something like that. So that's not what you see, obviously, usually. But it is what it is. Moving along to China. So we have some interesting results here because China, for some reason, is turbo running the season again. They're 4 games instead of 2.
Yeah, that's crazy, actually.
Yeah. Pretty much big upsets on the first day. FPX battling to a win over Tyloo, who are already qualified for playoffs now. And Titan beating Bilibili 2-0. Bilibili seem to give up like a lot of weird upsets. Titan also seems to be a team that get like a lot of unlikely victories. For those not familiar, Titan's IGL is Haodong, who was on basically the last piece that EDG changed to get the World Championship. But they do this a lot, to be fair. I mean, if people remember, Titan were at EWC because they somehow wanted this massive run in the qualified tournament for EWC. They beat Wolves, they beat Billy... I think they beat Billy there as well. No, they beat Dragon Ranger Gaming, and they beat Wolves, both of which were like then went on to go do amazing stuff at China at the Toronto. And they said they were like, what the hell? It's like a polar bear and Ireland moment, right? With Titan being at EWC along with the other big names. To be fair, at that time it was BBL and KC out of Europe, so there were a couple of them, but they were like a shock qualifier. Yeah, maybe Haodong's got something going on. We don't know. Maybe he's like an incredible IGL and we just don't really know it because he just hasn't got to senior internationals. Anyway, so Wolves and Nova both out of playoffs. First team's globally out of playoffs. Of course, then Wolves nearly beat Jilo. This was the last game before we recorded this. They took them. They were leading like 8-7 on the third map. You know how this goes, yeah. Once you're eliminated from playoffs, you just suddenly terrorize everyone else.
Suddenly, it just, mate. I could write a book about this. Like the amount of times this happened to us as well. Like if you remember that my last season in Vitality, where suddenly these 0-7 teams are just Lionel Messi, all of them. Like they all were just the best players in the world, the best team in the world.
We're 2-1 in groups. We beat the two hardest teams we're going to play against. We also lost to Navi. Then suddenly Gentlemates turn into best team in the world. Then Giants turn into like not the best team in the world. We still beat them, but they turned pretty good. And then Koi turn into best team in the world. Just back to back, and we go 3-3, and we miss playoffs, and everyone gets kicked. Unlucky.
I remember that game. There was 0-5, and they cheered. I've never heard a team cheer the way and celebrate the way they did after beating us. It was crazy. Like that. That is the good part about it, by the way, about these open qualifiers, that you don't have the haram teams anymore because this league has been plagued by it for 3-4 years. Plagued by these haram teams where they have no aspirations and no way of making it to anywhere deep. So they're just there to mess it up for someone else, basically. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the good part about open qualifiers, is that you're not going to see that anymore. Well, you will see it, but you won't see it in the same fashion, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, big matches to try this week, by the way, because EDG play XLG for first seed in their group. DRG play Trace for third seed / fourth seed in their group. Alpha's a mess. Tyloo are through. FX probably get the second seed. I think they can still get first, even if Tyloo mess up, but it's a mess. We'll see what happens with there. I mean, Tyloo is still looking good. Could be like the Wolves this cycle, dark horse contender out of China. EDG and Jilo still both looking good. Still going to come to the internationals. We'll see if they can actually do anything at internationals. I'm finishing up with NA. Just a note here: we had to record this on Sunday night rather than on Monday, like we wanted to for various reasons. So we don't know the results of C9 Lev and NRG Furia yet. You will know by the time it's out. But of the games we do have, Crew 2-0 Sen. Obviously, this is all kind of marred by Victor having to sub in for Jerwin. He played pretty well, Victor, to be fair. Joe P had some tech issues apparently at the arena. His mouse wasn't working until like 5 seconds before the game, apparently. I don't know what you think about this Sen lineup. It feels like they're going a bit galactic. It's like, this is what Sentinels do, right? They go Galactico with their signings. They always chase names. They always chase like the big flashy signings, and it puts a lot of. They get 1 or 2 guys who are relatively unknown, and it puts a lot of pressure on those guys. Like you remember Kampeki. This is like a deep pool, but you remember, this was the year when we were in NA where you joined the crew. They basically signed Kampeki from underneath you, and they never really did anything with him. They got into the league and that was it. And like they just made everything on Kampeki. Like the community just made everything on Kampeki. Anything went wrong, and then he just disappeared after that. Ironically, I feel like they do treat like a Galacticos, like Real Madrid. Just sign the big players. Ironically, I think that might be better next year for them. I think if you go to open circuit, it becomes more important to sign those big players because you have less time to develop all that sort of stuff, less games, less ability to do all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think, to be fair, people also underrated Crew coming in because we didn't see them in kickoff. They're still a strong core. I don't know. Any thoughts on this?
I didn't catch this game, but with the Sentinels team, it just seems mismatched to me, man. It just seems like doesn't seem like a team that can win almost from the outside with the names I see and how they fit together and how they play. It just seems super confused almost. I think also the fact that the coach has come in halfway through, well, after kickoff rather, it just it's a lot easier for a coach to come into an established squad that's been playing together for years and come in like that and do well, because then he's basically creating this honeymoon period. Whereas if you're a coach coming into a team that is all over the place, as Sentinels were, it's a lot harder to then take that and do something with it. So I do pity Ewok in a sense for what he has to do with this team, but I'm not confident about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. Other games, we'll talk about G2 MIBR later. 100 Thieves EG, 2-0, it's just kind of a stomp. 100 Thieves put more and more distance between themselves and the chasing pack, I think, in Americas. They were a legit dark horse for one seed in that group. So that group, for reference, Sen, Crew, 100 Thieves, EG, and RG Furia. I could see them going 3-2 or 4-1 in that group and making the one seed and to playoffs. I actually thought this was the easy. I thought this was the easy group, actually, to be fair, out of the two when I was still on NRG. The more I look about it, EG's kind of will probably be a win for most teams. They'll probably go 0-5, honestly. But the other 5 teams, all of those teams could like claw their way out of that group. It might be a bit of a slog, like one of those seasons. But yeah, we'll see. And finally, Loud Envy. I didn't see too much of this game.
Clown Fiesta.
Yeah, 2-1. Dark had 75 kills and no overtimes, which is some crazy numbers, honestly. Like 25 on every map. Loxo had a big performance again. He should have got Rookie of the Year last year, in my opinion. I think I voted for him as Rookie of the Year. He's probably the most underrated player in like the English-speaking community, I think, in the world at this point. This all becomes on Loud management now, basically. They've got a reputation in NA for like fiddling with things, for doing things they shouldn't be doing with teams. Like the consensus last year, whatever, they were the best 0-5 team in the world because the pieces they had were there, and there was something there that's got a little bit unlucky in some of their games, and Loud just basically blew up the entire project. So if they don't fiddle with things, I think this team could be a real contender in Stage 2. But 2 tough games coming up ahead now. They're playing against, I think G2 and MIBR back-to-back or something. So that's good. They just need to sit on their hands and wait for this team to develop. But yeah, not too much to say. That concludes our go around the leagues. Let's get to our performances. Well, okay, welcome back. So now we're going through our 3 performance of the week, map of the week, match of the week. Just stuff we found interesting, basically. To start out with, performance of the week goes to DRX Yong, Lotus versus Nongshim. He goes 25, 14, and 2 on Chamber with 6 first kills. Again, the stats aren't the only reason for this, like why we pick a thing of the week, but does help, to be fair. Big game from him. And I would say he was the X factor overall in this series. So to give you a little bit of context here, Yong, this is his second game in VCT. He was on DRX Academy all of last year, Smoke and second initiator for the most part, split 1 and 2. He goes to Duelist after they drop Sacrifice for their split 3. Back on Smokes for a couple of games in the Academy 2026. Gets moved up to the main team to replace Hermes after Hermes has a bad kickoff, which I believe was his first game for the team as well. So, young up and coming guy. He has Chamber in this game, right? And this comp, let's go over here. Raze, Neon, Fade, Omen, Chamber. Very fighty comp. Double Duelist plus Chamber. You can't really play passive with this comp on Chamber. You've got to maintain space while it's taken. You've got to stand and fight. Enemies know they can get into any site for free if you don't, because you have no defensive util, basically. Right? So, to show you on this, what's interesting about this guy. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, to go back a couple of seconds, actually. Right. See what they're doing here. Initial A fight. They go in. Get the space for him. Immediately peel off. It's now his job to maintain that space. He has to actively maintain that line. Now, this sounds simple. Sounds easy to do. It isn't. It isn't from a personal perspective. It isn't from a macro perspective, because now you've got to have complete faith in that guy's aim. Your team has to have faith that he's going to shut down any attempt to come to system main. They can go C. conventionally you'd like stack a bunch of Vyas util onto here and make it really hard for him to go C, or you stack Killjoy util, anything like that. You'd always like this for a long time. You just stack C type util completely. They can't do it with this comp, so they have to stack towards C. This was a bonus, by the way, so they do still lose a bonus. But this kind of sets the stage. It sets a point of what they're going to be trying to do throughout this game, over and over and over again. They're going to put a lot of faith into him. They're going to put a lot of trust into him, and he's going to kind of make this stuff work for them. You can see the next round he does actually. He's not staying towards A every single round. He does go C next round, for example. Got it here. This round they do the DA fight. They put him on C. There's not much setup here. To be fair, he doesn't really need to set up. And look what he does here. Like he's on there. He's playing on the mound. He's playing mound. You'll see his micro here a little bit. It's hard to see this often, but he's being really smart with the angles he's playing with. He's playing this headshot angle. He's trying to play. He's making it very unpredictable for them. 1 kill, bam, out. And then he immediately pushes back into sight.
Seems mega confident. I mean,
yeah,
seems crazy confident.
Yeah, this kid is very confident. But he has to be, and this is what makes this comp work for them, because again, this is a weird comp, right? And this is the problem that teams have playing Chamber. There's no passive mode for Chamber. You have to have someone who is mega confident, who's going to hold down the entire thing. That's why Heretics were doing it on every map, because that means, say what you like about Comeback, they said what they like about Comeback. He is that guy. That is him in the T. Yeah, you need that. And this is what this game kind of becomes over and over and over and over again. Like, you see this throughout this half. Like this was another round where he just out. Doesn't need set up this time, just walks out. Has his TP back here. RB tries to pull a fast one. Nope. Doesn't work. And granted, there is a degree to which this also works very, very well against Nongshim, because Nongshim are the team that's going to abuse Bucky, they're going to abuse Judge, they're going to abuse Stinger, right? You beat those weapons by maintaining range and having it in the first place. So that is like a nice matchup for him, but he gets massive value against them, and this happens throughout the half. Nongshim stop challenging in most rounds, so they run into the stack instead, and when he is challenged, he just gets value. And it mitigates all the natural problems this comp would have on defense. As a result, he like 19 kills in the first half. They get to 8 rounds, gets into a good spot. He gets a bit of he has a good attack as well, to be fair. It's not as good, and it's obviously it's Chamber. It's hard to be good on attack on that thing. And it's also hard to see like what makes it good, because so this is a decent round. The spectator's a little bit of a mare here. I don't know who it is. I'm sorry, but you have a little bit of a mare here. He's on the anti-eco. He's got his outlaw. You get a little bit of a sense from it from Minimap and from his POV. He's very smart about playing like half angles, playing off angles, all this sort of stuff. He's just getting kill after kill after kill. And obviously he misses the last one, but that's fine. He's had the confidence to take 3 kills on that. It's obviously heavily favoured towards him because it is an anti-eco, but even so. And even on attack, when it doesn't work out, to be fair, they do set him up really, really well as a team. So this was like a good example. Like he blows this round. He actually blows this round a little bit. Is this the right round? Yeah. Yeah, he messes up this round a little bit, but it's still good. So you can see they're playing pretty conservative on the C and B side. They set him up. They set him up this lurk. He goes all the way up here. Sniffs out the wall entirely. They kind of get undone a little bit in this round because they do unfortunately get pushed on mid and they don't hold it as well. But look how he's playing. Look how aggressive he's moving up. And he knows that wall's there. Screw it, come fight me. Come fight me in the thorns, bro. And he gets posterized, but he gets Shaq dunked a little bit there. But it's still a good play. That's the thing. Like you can miss your shots, it can still be a good play. I mean, I wouldn't be losing. Like, he has a really good game here. And if I'm a DRX, Carrex, whatever we're calling them now, fan, I'm really excited about this because it feels to me this might be the piece they've been looking for. Because you've had Human and Freeing as quite aggressive, big threats on the firepower side for a long time in terms of like map space, roaming, all that sort of stuff. You've got Maka and Bane who kind of more stable, they stabilise things. Bane has some like, insane series now and again, but for the most part he's a pretty solid player. They tried to have Estrella play as like to free up Maka, to basically become more aggressive. It never really worked because Estrella was, I believe he was IGLing the entire time he was there. They tried guys like Flicker, they tried guys like Hermes, where they brought him from a duelist background, like duelist-minded flexes, to be the third aggressive guy. It never worked with them. I imagine they wanted to get Zinx, or however it's pronounced, EYNX, from the Academy team last year, but Gen G basically outbid them. would be my guess. I don't know this, but it makes sense intuitively. They may have found their guy. I don't know what you think, but it seems I'm really excited about this guy.
Seems mega confident, and you like that in a player, really.
Yeah.
I need to watch him more to have more of a concise opinion, but I think he just seems really aggressive. He seems like he fits, as you said,
Yeah. So that's really exciting for me. And on the Nongshim side, I should say a little bit, because they are in like a weird situation now where they could be out of playoffs by next week. Technically, they play Genji. If the results go against them, they could be out of playoffs mathematically, which is great. Crazy to think. 3 games in for the defending champions, right? To be fair, I don't think I think they're favored against Genji still. They should still win that game. They don't play horribly in this series. The meta's still kind of in their favour a little bit. At least one Leon is still around. I wouldn't panic too much. I just think there could be something really interesting here going on with that team.
I do wonder how much the Francis Euro was doing for them, though.
That is true.
I do wonder how much that was enabling the Neon, let's say.
That is true, yeah. I mean, I can see that. I mean, obviously he's on Breach in this game. It's very weird in terms of what he has to play now.
It's just almost a complete 180 in terms of how you're playing that versus how you're playing a Euro second duelist.
Yeah, I believe he was... And then the problem is also you can't really... It's hard to see what can really replicate the Euro as well. Like, we've seen a lot of teams, obviously, in a lot of tools.
No, there is not, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams trying to do double duelist still, but it's a very different type of double duelist.
If I was Nongshim, for example, I'd test whether you can really make the Euro work again.
Yeah.
To be honest, I would see if because and to be honest, if I was emea, I would do the same thing as well. By the way, where if you're a team that did so well having that secondary duelist Yoru, a lot of the dynamics of that are still the same in my opinion. It's just it's not as overpowered or as oppressive. So I would be interested to see or to know if they tried it and it didn't just was that bad, or if or if there is a realm where they can make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, moving on from that, we go down to our map of the week, and I will emphasize here, this isn't the best map of the week. We're not doing these in terms of qualitative. Like, obviously, we're going to tend towards more high-quality games, and we're not going to pick complete slop, but this isn't an endorsement of this being the best map of the week. I think that's important to say here, but it was, for me, it was the most interesting map of the week. So this is...
Can you send me a Valorant link, by the way?
Yeah. Let me pause. Okay, M8 Casey Haven. So, Salah has a lot to say about this series. So the Gentlemates comp, Neon, Phoenix, Cypher. Oh, that has not worked well. Let's get rid of those. Yeah, the Gentlemates comp was Neon, Phoenix, Cypher, Sova.
Over? Was it not Fade?
Omen. This was the comp last week.
Ah, okay.
Full turnaround this week. Neon. Fade. Omen. Viper. Veto. They're changing comps every official at the moment on this map, which... And still picking a map, which doesn't happen often. So most coaches in Tier 1 will tell you that's kind of something you really try to avoid, because it's hard to build up depth on the map if you're doing that. To be fair, Gentlemates, 2 very highly regarded coaches in that team. I mean, I guess 3 now, because Mavera's also joined, and Kundi and Paco. Funnily enough, I believe... Has Mavera ever been in franchising?
Oh.
Yeah, so Mavera hasn't been in franchising. Kundi has been in the top league before, but it was in 2022, so he hasn't been in franchising. Paco hasn't been in franchising. So we've got new bloods there, yeah? Which is funny because I think they're all older than you, but we're still calling them new bloods, so that's fine. But we've got new bloods in franchising, and they're trying some new stuff. So I understand the willing to take risks there. That was their comp. And Casey changed comp as well. Let me just get up what Casey's comp. What, actually, can you get it up?
Yeah, I got it. It was pretty much the same variation, just with Cypher instead of Viper and Phoenix instead of, well, I guess the secondary smoker, right? What was the smoker? Was it Omen? Yeah, it would have been Omen.
Yeah,
Right?
Omen, Fade, Cypher, Neon, Phoenix.
Yeah. So, okay, I have a lot of thoughts about this map, and we're missing Fade. Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm worried for KC based off this map that they won because Aves does not seem like a confident IGL to me, at least at the moment. Then this is completely from the outside. Aves seems like he's calling a play from a playbook that Eng has designed, and Eng is a coach that I'm very familiar with. I think he's a fantastic coach. This seems like KC from 3 years ago, and I can kind of analyze exactly what I saw, right? So, first of all, the classic KC and Eng style is conditioning. Conditioning is everything for him and the way he sees the game, in my opinion. Where Eng will always have 2 rounds. He'll have a fake and a real version, basically. And the way KC played this map and the way they play in general is they do the fake first, then they do the real round, right? And that can be really oppressive if you're not clocked into it, and it can be really easy to read if you are clocked into it. I think that's why a player that comes to mind is Trex, for example, who always has a really good read on those sort of stuff, and that's why I think historically Trex does really well against Eng. So yeah, here's the thing. Every single round had an idea behind it, which is a good thing, right? So, for example, number 1 round you saw was them faking A control with basically they would put an Omen smoke here, they would flash around the corner, flash around this wall, kinda, and then basically also M8 were reacting with their own Omen smoke in this area, the shallow one, basically. And the whole point is basically you want to force them off of the A line. You want to make it so they don't have deep info on either side. And yeah, this is the idea. And basically, first round they forced it. I mean, they faked it rather. They went into Insta Garage, I want to say, or Insta C hit. And then second round they actually did go behind it looking for a punish. The same thing was again with Cypher, for example. They had and this is just one round after the other, basically, where Cypher would for a cage, he wires up, he just basically does some passive pressure while his team fake the other side or go towards the other side. And then on the second round after that, they're going to go behind it this time and they're going to punish us. Again, you're seeing these rounds. You're seeing these rounds on defenses as well. For example, on defense, a classic Eng move is to 4-1 on a pistol and just run down one side. And in general, Eng is sending his team into an area he wants to contest. He wants to basically condition you into thinking that area will be contested for the rest of the game because people do see the game that way. When you're in game, you're not thinking, oh, it's just a pistol round, doesn't matter. You're thinking, oh, A is hard to take because they're contesting it as 4, right? And you would know this as well. That conditioning does work on certain teams. It doesn't work. It doesn't work on certain people. It does work on a lot of teams as well, though. So again, you're seeing these repeat rounds and you're seeing basically one fake, one real, one fake, one real. I don't think it's necessarily outdated. I think it's still a style that can work. I do think it can be easy to read, especially by people who you've been playing against a lot. Maybe for this M8 team is a vastly tier 2 team from top to bottom almost, apart from maybe like Starkso and Martin, of course. So it did work on this Haven. I could also see the angle where Martin should be aware of this, by the way, in some ways. But yeah. So this is how KC are playing, right? And then you also have the aspect that one team doesn't have flashes, which is their mate side. KC do have flashes. They're not the best flashes, albeit they are flashes that have to be thrown out of hand on the move. They're flashes that don't really do too well in terms of setting up the Neon, in my opinion, because there's no real way of flashing out certain angles that Neon wants to get into.
There's pretty much 2 areas where these Phoenix flashes are good. It's here and it's here. And in neither case, like, it doesn't really help you, obviously. I mean, it's hard. I feel like it's weird for Neon coming out of here, so he doesn't really set them up because Neon wants to like blitz them out of here and then just you do wall across here or whatever. Does nothing. These flashes are horrible for that.
So what you saw a lot, and what I think I even have a clip of it, if ready maybe, is you would see Neon walling up like this, and the idea is Phoenix is going to flash through here while Neon goes here. The problem with this is that you're getting a lot of these untradeable kills, and in KC. I mean, the Gentlemates were more than fine disrespecting these flashes. They were more than fine playing in this position that normally would never be playable if the enemy team had, a Breach, a Sky, a Yoru, for example. They were fine playing these deep positions, these close positions, no flash positions almost, and punishing KC, right? And this also
let's roll that round. Let's roll that round. I think this is the one.
Yeah. So you're going to see here, for example, KC are scaling onto A. They're not met with any resistance outside of this Odin spam, so they're going to keep going. Now, teams generally know that when you're not met with resistance on the first part of A, it's a higher chance that you will be met by resistance on the second part, right? And look at the util that's coming out here if you just want to go back. Yeah. You're having, first of all, it's all being eaten by Veto util, which is a massive failure on KC's side to understand the comp they're playing against, which is surprising because they're playing against them. They're playing it themselves. You can't just exec straight into a Veto like this. You have to mini fake. You have to basically force out that cooldown and then re-hit, right? They're just running into it, first of all. But second of all, look at the angles and the way they're peeking and the util they're throwing. It all has basically no cohesion between each other. There's an Omen Flash coming out right, while the Phoenix is peeking into it almost, which is bad. Your Yoru is running into a certain pathing where your Phoenix is trying to cut early, and all of this just equals you're going to get picked early, basically, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't work very well. So this is what worries me about KC. Their defense looks a lot better because it's Eng's defense, and Eng's defense has always historically been very good, and his attacks have always historically been a bit lackluster, right? And this reminds me a lot of the Magnemite gelling era, where basically it doesn't seem as if Aves has a strong vision on how he wants to play, and he's almost just taking what Eng is telling him and trying to do it in game. And you're seeing a lot of these moments where they're super unconfident about how they actually want to play the game. You're seeing a lot of these bullshit defaults. But I mean by bullshit default is basically throwing rudimentary utility into certain areas and basically rotating off of that. So for example, we're going to pressure garage and then just rotate A, right? Which is the way people used to play 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago even. And it's not a style that works because no one's biting off of stuff.
And we had twice as much util before as well.
First of all, second of all, most of this util doesn't work. There's no pressure actually being created, and there's no movements happening on the map based on the default you're doing. Now, you saw KC coming up and trying to scale, especially A. It just seemed like they had no idea who was first man, who was second man, how they were supposed to peak. The normal way, or at least in my opinion, of course, I'm not hired currently, but in my opinion, the way you're supposed to scale A is you're supposed to have a very solid pathing, and you're supposed to cut deep instantly with the Neo. You want to get out into this area instantly with the first and second man. And the second man's job is not to peek into a different angle than the first man. The second man's job is generally to clear up after the second man. The third man's job is to basically clear the deep angle. So in general, you want it to be that when you're executing with this kind of comp, especially that this Neon and Phoenix, they're pushing into these kinds of areas, they're waiting for the wall, and then they're hitting basically this area on their scale, rather than coming out here, right? Because when you're coming out here and one's coming out here, these are a lot easier to isolate for the defense team, and you saw that over and over. And you would see, for example, Phoenix flashing out of left and dying to this area. And again, this is just a failure in how to scale on Haven A. In general, you need people to scale into this backside first. You need to have the 2 or 3 men there, and then there's the 4th and the 5th people are the ones who generally are going to peek out short on late contact with the people who are ready on backside, right? You saw this back to front with Casey, and that was the big issue for me on attack. And I think they played a flash, but it's almost like they didn't need the flash, right? Yeah. They didn't get value out of this flash, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think overall, KC won. I think on that attack flatters them a lot in terms of it relied on like a 2v4 from Sugetsu. I think a few clutch rounds here and there. Very good chaos rounds going in their favor, basically, when these 3v3 post plants going in their favor. So it wasn't an attack that fills me with confidence. The defense was a lot better, and that is classic KC. But yeah, so I'm very worried for KC based on this map. Okay. I think it was interesting seeing how the veto came into play, and a lack of understanding almost from both teams on how to play against it. But yeah,
I mean, I think that's fair. It's interesting a few of the points you made there with regards to this being very much a quote-unquote an Eng performance, right? Because I kind of saw a fair bit of the same. I had a few marks here, actually. So, I mean, one thing that did catch my eye in this game, these teams both kind of abuse the Odin, but only one of them understood how to abuse the Odin. And obviously,
yeah.
So I'm going to explain what I mean there as well. Like this was actually, speaking slightly more positively, Narrate had a really good game here, and there's a flash of something a little bit interesting there. So this is round 3 here. Odin. So my team we saw spammed here at the start. This is like, I'm not even sure. I think this works into Underground, this spray here. Was it here? I believe.
Just to cut your story,
Yeah.
but I think this is also a perfect example of, you see the way they're scaling, and they're scaling in close. Rather, imagine if they had just both gone deep there, for
Yeah. Yeah.
example. This Martin is completely fucked.
Yeah. Exactly.
He's either going to have to TP away or he's going to die, basically, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is really the way Martin uses the Odin in this path is not particularly good. He's basically using it just as he's using it as a glorified phantom. He has like a couple of wall spams which don't really get much value and doesn't do anything other than that. Narrate immediately buys back an Odin. I guess narrates. I don't like buying this on attack. I guess the idea is to spam out smokes when Martin spams himself, right?
It's a classic Eng reaction as well,
Yeah.
where whenever an Odin's on the team, they just spam the position back with an Odin themselves.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean,
very classic Eng solution.
I mean, Narrate also then buys buys the Ares as well a few rounds, which is something you do not see often because the Ares is kind of ass, honestly. I mean, Gentlemates has this entire thing. Like, they don't seem to really know what they're doing. Gentlemates down on this round, for some insane reason, have 2 Odins. I guess because they're maxed out on money, but just does nothing. I mean, you've got
if you can.
Yeah, I guess. But like, because I mean, obviously, the moment they see this, they should just run this guy down, and yeah, you can get more value out of this garage. Like, generally speaking, the good wall bangs here on being garage is kind of where you get the value of the Odin. But yeah, but there's something interesting as well that I wanted to highlight in the second half. So on the attack, obviously you criticised a lot. I don't think it was amazing. It did seem to me Casey understood this map better. The way I had it sort of in my mind was they had better gimmicks with how they use the comp, which makes sense in terms of it's a playbook thing, in terms of it's an Eng thing. I had it written down. You kind of seen the best Eng in this game, which obviously I think I would argue, even though you don't really like the attack in general, you probably agree with. Like, this was a Eng performance. And I think Narrate had a very good game here. He's very embarrassing, loses a clutch at the end of the half in very embarrassing fashion, but his util on the fade is really good. He obviously knows how Eng wants him to play. Obviously, they worked together for a long time, and he plays really well. And the defense ends up being sort of his half. So there was a nice Odin play also I wanted to highlight, which was showing you how. This is the key, by the way. There's a general point to understanding how these guns work, which people don't really get, which is weird because it's not that complicated. But you see where he's playing in the garage? The entire point, if you ever like doing this in your ranked games, don't do this. Don't use Odin because you'll just suck with it. But assuming you want to, the entire point is to create asymmetry. Like, you shoot them, they can't shoot you back. So like, he's positioning on here. Asymmetric. That's the entire thing with Odin with Ares. This round is like not amazing for me. It's decent. They have pretty good responses, pretty good reactions. They play pretty well. You shouldn't be going down to 2-0 and here you go. But it's not bad. It's not horrible. There's a bunch of like stuff during the round. This is what kind of makes me interested because they basically have a bunch of very nice little They have a bunch of nice little micro plays for front half. Look here, Luna and Narrate taming up with his flash, eye, sees, whatever the hell combo. They have a bunch of little nice micro plays like that throughout this half. It's a small set piece, right? But coordinating initiator and duelist util is not as easy as you'd think. And the distinction I would make would be between, I'm going to say, Narrate here and someone like I've worked with Verno in that regard, right? They play a lot of the same characters. They often play the same sort of positions on A. Narrate's big strength as a player, the thing that makes him he's better than anyone else in the world, is his microcomms, his coordination with his teammates in a way that very few others sort of manage. Like, I would argue Verno isn't as good as him at this. Someone like Leo, for example, famously good comms, but not high bandwidth comms, if that makes sense, right? He doesn't comm that much in game.
Never coming a lot. When he comms, you listen, is the point. Like, when he comms, it's good info.
Yeah. Whereas with Narrate, it's kind of like he talks a lot. But that means that there are certain ways in which that can be a little bit difficult to play with, but when it goes well, and you do stuff like that, you get these lovely micro plays off, you get this coordination between you and your teammates, which is amazing. All that sort of stuff, right? So I would say if there's a reason for Carmine fans to be optimistic, and they're reaching for one right now, right? Because they've lost 8 of the last 9 games. They need to win next week, or they are most likely pretty much out of discussion for stage 1. So if we get up Carmine's VLR here, this is where Carmine sit right now. They lost in Blender, their quarters. 1-3 in kickoff, only beating a pretty flaccid, whatever, foot team. Lost both their games in Clash, lost both their games so far in groups. Heretics next game, then Foot, then Na'Vi. Now, you can argue this is kind of winnable. They can come back from this now. Like, they could make the run back.
Super losable as well, though.
But yeah, they're all super losable, right? And they have been losing for a long time now. It's been a while. But if there is a ray of hope here, like, the Ray is the right guy for this team, in my opinion. I think Zage and N can get the best out of him. He can get the best out of them. He can get the best out of his teammates. I think the point you're making with regards to Aves isn't quite comfortable. Yeah, he's calling from Eng's playbook more so right now. I think that's valid. There's a road here for them to do something well. So Getz is also, I think, looking quite a lot better, to be fair. He's looking better certainly than he was previous form last year. So all of that's kind of working in their favour. But yeah, it was an interesting game. And I mean, Gentlemates, we need to see more. This wasn't a convincing series from them either, to be fair.
No, they still look really shook after the meta changes, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we were bullying them last week as well. I don't know why it is just the bully Gentlemates podcast now. But yeah, they've got Na'Vi next, which again I think is an interesting matchup, a swing matchup in the group most likely. But then they'll be going into Heretics and Liquid. So there is a world in which Gentlemates just, again, they could go 1-4-2-3, something like that, miss playoffs entirely. It's not as explosive as Nongshim because they'll be fighting towards the end because they at least got their one win this week, but we'll see what happens for them. But moving on from that, G2, MIBR, match of the week. And this was actually a very, very good match, to be fair. It was a 2-0, pretty tight 2-0, high level of play, pretty revealing about both teams. So, start on Lotus, nothing much. Well, the one thing to say about the comps basically is Harbour on G2's side. This is the thing they're trying to make work. It looks like there's some... They do a lot of good things with it, but they also show the limitations of this big time in this series. Harbour double controller, to be clear, not single controller. It's an interesting choice on this map in particular over Viper, because I think you lose a lot of ability to work the map individually unless you're
passive
really
pressure.
good. Yeah,
you lose a lot of passive pressure,
yeah, exactly.
Just naturally.
Yeah, exactly. But you have certain amount. If you're good with it, then obviously what it gives you in terms of then when you actually go into your hits and you go into all that sort of stuff is very, very, very high level, right? Credit where it's due, G2 did a lot of that. They were very good at pushing and pulling around MIBR, Leaf and Baby Bay, Leaf on Omen, Baby Bay on Vice, playing a lot of 3-2, 4-1, weak sides a lot, getting valuable space off of that. They'd like roam up onto B, they'd roam up onto A. I mean, mostly around B and C, to be fair. It's kind of hard, no wall on A. Valiant played the Harbour very well as well. To be fair, he's one of the only players I've seen that actually uses the bubble well, the smoke, with the damage.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's
why we just struggle to say that
shield.
It protects you. Yeah, shield.
Why
are we struggling to explain what this bubble is?
I mean,
it doesn't block abilities, right? It only blocks bullets. It's a bulletproof smoke.
Yeah, it's bulletproof smoke. Yeah.
Why have we just struggled to say that?
But talk about bulletproof smoke, like an album title or something. I don't know. Anyway.
That's a fire album, no? Yeah, bulletproof smoke? That sounds like something Nas would have dropped back in the... Yeah. Why have I just said Nas like that?
Nas. We're going to talk about Nas. 50 cents.
What the fuck have I just said?
Nas and 50 cents. Oh.
Fuck, really? Okay, go.
Okay. Okay, so... This was a good example of a round, actually, of them using the bulletproof shield fire album, using it well. Put it up on here. They've already walled off pit. Stick it up. Bam. Can't spray. Can't get anything down there. Gives them plenty of time to get out. Very good timing. Sounds simple. Most teams aren't using it that well at this point. They still do lose this round, and it's kind of the problem that they have. Because at some point, enemy team can just stand there, come back in, fight. With this comp, with the Harbour, you're not forcing them off of their spots. You have basically no damage util. You have relatively passive players, I would say, on both Neon and on both Neon and Fade in terms of Jorgamo and Trent. Jorgamo for Julius is fairly passive, I would say. Kind of hard, blanket statement, but yeah. Trent, obviously, very fundamentally solid initiator, but very much in a more passive mode. And what you kind of see over time in this half is that MIBR, they get smart about this. They get smart about how they're playing. And they start basically taking more space off of them that make you start from further out, all this sort of stuff. You can see here, taking up the space on B, playing quite close to lane, playing this up angle on A. They just murk them because they understand. You'll see here in a second. I think Aspas loved this angle, by the way. It's like a big Aspas angle, if I remember from prep last year.
Yeah, this is an Aspas angle.
Yeah. But it doesn't, I mean, they even get the kill down, it doesn't really matter. But MIBR getting smarter about this, they're adjusting, and they hit defense, they get 6.5, I believe it was. They hit defense, they're just rough. And this is the big Harbour problem. He doesn't bring much in terms of stopping power, in terms of if you've got a team on, you've on defense, you've got a team on attack coming into you. Look, they can walk through your walls. They get a slight slow on it, they don't care. There's 3 of them walking through, you're not going to kill all 3. You kind of need to be threatening to play in your bubble, really, to get this value out of Harbour. It was the same in the old Harbour. You had to kind of be playing behind your push smokes. You had to have the threat that, they can be right behind us push smokers, 2 or 3 people. It's the same with the new Harbour. You have to threaten your bubble, and the way that Valiant plays is very good on a macro level. They know he's not doing that. They're just aware. There's a round here. I'm not going to play the comms. You can go look at this on the VODs for the comms. They are kind of telling. I don't know what it's like. I don't know what the copyright situation is, to be fair. That's basically it. But comms are running throughout this round. It's 11-7. They win this round. It's not horrible. But you can see as this round goes through, they're comming the entire time they can be coming, blah, 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 blah. But look how spread out they are. Look how passive they're playing. Look at their ults as well. They have 5 ults this round. Enemy team has just walked into B, used 1 ult, got plant down. This is too safe. They basically waste Fade ult here because these players have no chance of fucking getting in time. No chance. So that's 1 ult down, that's 2 ults down with the Harbour. This is a good old Harbour Rockers here, to be fair. They used Jorgamo ult as well, that's a 3rd ult. So they use 3 ults for this retake. And they get into 2v3, they shouldn't be winning this really, they just barely win it through. So they had 4 ults, it's pretty clear they didn't have a great plan to using the ults pre-round. If you go listen to the comms, it's kind of like, I can reactive ult basically, but they don't really have a plan to retake with them. They don't really have anything playbook-wise, it sounds like, for how you're going to retake with them. So you're starting the time with and you've got no flank as well because you play so passive across the map. This is obviously a good pick here, good opening pick for Valiant here. So you look at that and you think, okay, from a coaching perspective, you look at that and you think, they got the round, they spent so many resources to get it. 3 ults for that, when you kind of knew exactly what they were going to do in the entire round, which was walk into B. This is kind of the G2 problem at the moment. This team was scary for us in kickoff when they destroyed us. They were taking a lot of peaks, what I like on defense in particular. They're taking a lot of peaks, a lot of actions where it's like 55-45. 55% this goes well and they win a round off of it. 45% they potentially, let's say, lose a round off of it, right? Now you want to be doing that every time almost as a team because you win more than you lose. But they're super aggressive and they were taking these gambles that were in their favour and just taking them. They're not really doing that, it feels like, anymore. They're retaking every time, they're playing slow, they're playing these patient, and you can't do that against a team like MIBR and expect to win because they're just too good individually. You put them into these situations, they're just going to win. I don't know if you had any thoughts in particular.
Yeah, I think it's better if I cover them on the split part, though, because
Yeah.
I can kind of go into the bigger picture almost.
Sure. So we're moving on to split now. We're going to get the developer up for this one. I have a couple of thoughts on this, but let's...
you can go first.
No, we'll let you lead, and I'll just say what I say.
So I'm just pulling these up, and then what am I looking for? Levi's. So, okay. What I saw from this game was a massive clash in styles. Now, first of all, G2 are running the Harbor comp again on this map, replacing the Viper with the Harbor again. So First of all, you're having this almost classic Viper conundrum where they're replacing the Viper with the Astra, which, in my opinion, doesn't do it as effectively, but still does a similar job in terms of passive pressure. I mean, historically, just for anyone who's unaware, you always have this Viper wall, or way back in the day, you would have these Cypher cages, and the whole point is that you're forcing two people to hold this choke because you're basically sectioning off the choke, right? So, and this is what we call passive pressure. By being able to open this Viper wall, you are just instantly creating pressure that you can cross, and that there can be multiple behind it, which is why you see a general flush of util that always goes Viper wall up into a Fade Prowler from defense, and it's just a repeat of this utility, basically, right? And they're using the Astra instead of that, of course. So, big thing about this both comps is neither team has a good flash. They both have the Vice flash, which I think is a very finicky and almost whatever flash. It's hard to set up a lot of the time. It's going to be hard to do it instantly, because if you use it somewhere else, / if you're doing it more stationary, it's good for traps, but it's not the best for just we're running into an execute. You don't want a Vice flash. You want a Sky flash. You want a Euro flash. You want a KO Breach flash. These are real flashes, I would say, right? And you see the complete difference in style from the two teams in how they're playing it. And funnily enough, 5 to 6 years ago, Yassin Lahmari was the one who actually said this, and it still sticks in my head to this day, which is teams play against themselves. However they attack, they're going to defend the same way, or they're going to defend against themselves more naturally. And that's a natural thing, right? You're always going to think about defense of how you attack. You're going to basically prevent, what you think you could counter it by, right? So what you see MIBR play very correctly, and I would be interested if this is on purpose or if it's not, but it doesn't really matter where the heroes are. But what you basically see from MIBR is they are playing every single close contact position possible, and G2 cannot flush them out, right? So you're seeing on MIBR's defense, they're playing every single choke close. Vents, A, B, doesn't matter. They are never playing deep. They are always playing on the first lines, basically. So you're seeing these crossfires everywhere almost, right? And you just have these, and G2 struggled for the first 3 or 4 rounds. G2 really struggled breaking through these strokes because, of course, they don't have a flash, right? And the Fade Prowler is something, but especially when the way MIBR are doing, where they generally have 2 people in angle, the Fade Prowler doesn't do much. It's good against the one off angle person, but if you're having 2 people playing these angles, it's not great, right? Especially if you don't have a flash to break it. You also really only have Neon Stun, and being able to Neon Stun both this and this is almost impossible, right? So that's what G2 struggled with initially. However, there was a pause and a clear adjustment, I would say, and I'm again interested if this was on purpose or not, where G2 started heavily splitting a lot more. So you saw a lot more basically either second contacts or splits. And when I say splits, I don't mean hitting at the same time, because that's again quite easy for MIBR's defensive system to hold. It's off timing splits. So you would see, for example, 3 people walking up A while 2 people walk up mid, for example. And this was what worked really well, and this is where basically how they got 6 rounds in a row, where they would always basically be able to catch the off kill, and if they trade out equally on the first guys coming through main, then the secondary guys are always going to get value, basically, and that's what you saw a lot, right?
Yeah, this was a big thing I saw as well. But it's I mean, the way that Leaf and Baby Bay work, and the way that they get flanks in space, and they get the ability they basically create the space for people to walk back into. It's really impressive, and it's really impressive also doing this without a Viper. Very impressive. It's a big thing.
It's a second contact hitting, basically, and it would be 1 guy, 2 guy, potentially 3 guys even. But the whole point is that the first guys are basically creating pressure here, so that these guys can walk in almost secondary. And you're talking about 5 seconds to 6-7 seconds difference between the two, so that they can clean up basically any kills. And it works really well against people playing close like this, because they cannot hold all these angles for that amount of time at the same time. And that's why the secondary hit works a lot better than the split. If it was a split, it's a lot easier for these guys to kill these guys and then turn around to this. But if these guys play the way they're supposed to, which is they're supposed to not full commit, but just almost give the intention of committing and force these people to fight, then it's a lot easier for these split people to come in and basically kill them, right? Now, that was MIBR's defense, and that's basically what got them 6 rounds just playing like that. And again, a lot of walking. You saw Verno, for example, never being afraid to walk down this angle. You saw just people being willing to walk at all times and playing aggressively, which again, if you're playing as a team that has no open flashes where they can just, sky flash out in the open, Phoenix flash, whatever, it's a good way to play, actually. So, props to them. If it was on purpose, they might just be so smart as players, all of them, that they realized it themselves, or they've realized it in this meta themselves, that that's how they can play. Because sometimes players do make those decisions without really understanding why or knowing why. or being able to explain it rather. But yeah, so that's what you saw on G2's attack MIBR's defense, right? And it works super good well against the Harbor until they start splitting. It works super good until they start these second contact splits.
Yeah.
On the other side, you saw G2 playing the classic G2 way, playing very deep. They never played close. They played deep angles, almost holding, trying to hold from here. You saw maybe Jorgamo once in a while with the judge in vents, but he's always almost lurking it by himself. Otherwise, they're playing deep angles. Sometimes they're playing in zones where basically they're letting the enemy team come in, retaking and pushing them back, and then holding their positions. But they're never committing to holding these close chokes that MIBR were holding, right? And this is what I think gave MIBR the edge. Where basically they're playing in a way that they're playing these deeper angles like they used to in old metas. But in this meta, MIBR's way of playing, when there isn't a consistent flash on the enemy team, is a lot better and is a lot more effective. So I do think the scoreline actually flattered G2 a bit on the defensive side. I think obviously they're one of the best teams in the world, so they had good rounds and they're going to have good moments. But I think defensively, the problem I saw was they're not willing to commit to punishing MIBR's comp, and then the lack of resources it has in certain areas.
Yes, and there's something very important to make a point here. So G2, they went up 10-7, I think. They did very well in the first few rounds and a half. At that point, Fraud takes timeout. And I don't know what's said on the timeout, but I think MIBR kind of realised collectively, okay, we gotta slow down. Because with how passive they're playing, if we just walk around, we'll get into a site, they're not going to disrupt us on our defaults, their pacing on retakes is kind of off, the way they're using alt sneakers is going to keep them to like a couple of rounds at most, we can win off of that basis, right? Because doing 10-7, it's like, that's actually quite, like, that's not a huge margin, but that is like, you are putting yourself on a barrier, particularly where you are at, right? And that's the difference I've kind of seen with G2 now compared to Kickoff. Because again, we played against the Kickoff on Split, we got absolutely demolished by them on Split. And the key thing that made the defense good at that point was they would disrupt our defaults constantly. They would just push up onto us, they would send it on A, they would send it on B, they would just go into lobbies. I don't think they did too much run mid, but I don't remember massively. And they just stopped doing that. They've gone back to whatever, playing super passive. Like this is a round I had Mark, for example, right? This is after, I believe, either MIBR or G2 second timeout. This is like the second. You can't see the score on the screen, but it's 11-12. They put up these setups where they're basically threatening, we're going to play super close, we're going to disrupt your defaults. They want a low buy here as well, so they've got shotty, 2 stingers, 2 rifles. But the way, like, these guys just don't buy it. And like, they panic and they make it very, very clear what they're doing. Like, if they just sat there, they might be able to do it even. But they know they're not going to play in this smoke. They know that they're stacked up here because of how they harbor ward. They just walk onto site because then they're operating in a way where they're basically they're acting like they're going to disrupt the default, but MIBR don't buy it at all. They just know, okay, as long as we don't do something incredibly stupid, these guys are just going to put together a shitty retake and lose the round, basically, right? And it's exactly what happens. This takes them to overtime. This takes them to the eventual loss. And I think, this is a very different. This is a very different G2 to one that we played against like 2 months ago.
I would say if I was G2, and they maybe did this at moments, but I would have doubled down more on basically using Harbor just to fight as deep as possible constantly. Because MIBR's comp would have struggled inherently getting back onto place the same way G2's comp inherently struggles getting back into place. Spaces, especially after initial U2 has been thrown. I think if G2 played a much more, we're gonna abuse the fact that we have double smokes. And what's the key benefit when you're playing double smokes into non-double smokes is you can, in theory, control more of the map at the same time, right? You can, in theory, have an Omen contesting this area, or in that case, Astra contesting this area solo, almost like Mazzino was doing on attack and defense. While, for example, with Harbor, we're going to contest mid, or we're going to contest A deep. We're going to force these initial chokes harder and force them to come through them harder. And then, for example, those passive setups will get a lot more value because then they're not going to have anything to clear you off site, right? Or then, for example, these positions get a lot more value because, again, they've used all their util to get back onto it. They have to use the Fade Prowlers to get back onto it. They have to use a Boombot to get back onto it. And that just makes everything else easier. And I think that part being missing a lot for G2 was the thing that gave MIBR the win. I think if G2 adjust their style, they actually probably dominate them, I would say, because I think MIBR, again, are a bunch of superstars, and I think they play super, they can be very loose sometimes, and they can be very punishable sometimes, which is I think why they failed in kickoff, for example, among other things. But yeah, I think right now, and this kind of also makes me think about what we spoke about last week about I don't think people have readjusted to not having Euro, and realized certain things that come up with these comps, right? I would wonder if both teams, how much they identified the fact that of how they're playing, first of all, if MIBR knew the way they were playing was the correct way, or if it was, maybe just an instinctual thing. I would be interested if G2, for example, recognized the fact that them playing passively in the position they were playing passively is not good against the comps they were playing against, and they have to play more aggressively. So I am interested if they realize these things, for example, and I'm interested in if they're going to change it next week. A team like G2, I think, also is good to fix it next week as well. Obviously, insanely smart coach with Josh over there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Probably one of the best IGLs in the world. I mean, top 3 IGLs in the world to Berlin.
Yeah.
And you could, I mean, that's the thing. You could see from the way they were setting up. Like, it wasn't like they were just doing stupid stuff. It was just they kind of didn't really react to the challenges of their game.
I think also this is a much higher quality match than, for example, we saw in EU this week. There's nothing even close to it. When I am criticizing a lot of the things, it's not as if they're doing something inherently awful and completely wrong. It's more so they're playing a style and it's a mismatch in this situation with this specific comp. If they played against a different comp next week and played the same style, they'd probably bang the other team out, right?
Yeah.
But for this matchup, for this style, it's almost like they just walked into a mismatch, right?
Yeah, and it happens. It's just a question of adjusting going forward. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think this game wasn't massively negative for either team. The MIBR probably a little bit better than expected. Maybe people underrated them a little bit. Obviously, they're always going to be a very strong team. They're always going to be a looser team, most likely. Sort of very much based on the technical aspects of the game more so. But they're also getting into a perfect mate for them, I think, in the regular season as well. I think they're one of the teams that will survive in the on-nerf and just. Actually, the way I was thinking about this was, like we were saying in terms of if Euro gets nerfed, some teams should be playing the Euro, right? I suspect that probably MIBR, if Neon gets nerfed, they should still play the Neon. Because I think like everything else in the kit almost doesn't matter, but the way that basically they can attack and they can scale with the Neon is just so important for them. And making this particular configuration of players with Aspas as basically a secondary duelist at this point, with Verno, with Mazzino and Tex. Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens there. But yeah, a good match and a good showing from both teams.
Oh, it was a great game, by the way, from a macro point of view and from a micro point of view.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic game, I think, in that aspect.
Yeah. Okay, so moving to our final section, we teased this at the beginning. We're filling this out still, but we're going to finish up with a couple of hot takes. I asked Sarah to find his hottest take in terms of the season, in terms of going forward. I'm going to present my hot take first. So here we go. Let me get this up. Okay, here's my hot take. I think winner of this game is going to do a Paper X. And I have justification for this. So, both these teams, obviously, 0-2 in the group right now. If they lose, probably out of the tournament. About out of London contention, most likely. You can still get in like as a 2-3 or 1-4 team, but it's very unlikely. I think they'll probably go to, at best, they go to playoffs and they get bounced, right? But we've seen this before, right? And we've seen this before because this was pretty similar to the situation Paper X were in. Lost the first 3 games, albeit a bit closer. Make this run through. They get 4th seed in their group. They start in lowers. They just about make the run through to get to the tournament. They'll still well in qualifiers for EWC. Who cares? And then they win Toronto. Now, I'm not saying these teams are going to win London, but if you look at both teams, obviously horrible records recently. Very strong coaching staffs. In the Heretics case, a very strong IGL. In the Carmine case, IGLs maybe a little bit less
experienced, let's say.
Less experienced, yeah.
Nice.
But you still have very good players around him. You have Narrate, you have Lune's on and off, but Lune at his best can be very, very good. You've got a good setup there. Both these rosters definitely have the potential to do very well. So that's my hot take basically is that I think one of these teams is going to run after this game because you've got to beat them. You've got to beat whoever the other team is in this game, right? And then you actually kind of have a pretty good road forward for the rest of the year because remember the big thing is how well you can do in groups. Carmine have to play Foot and then Na'Vi. Heretics have to play Gentlemates and then Foot. And we've just said Gentlemates, we're not sure, they're not really on the same level. Na'Vi, again, could have a very rough time. They're still dealing with the visa stuff. They're still dealing with the transition back to when Exit comes back in. Foot's obviously looking very, very good right now, but they're at the point where they'll probably get complacent. I think they're not going to go 5-0 in groups. I think that's unlikely. They're going to drop games here and there. So there's a route. Whoever wins this game has a very easy route to go 3-2 and to get like second seed in that group. And then you go into playoffs. And then you're what, 2? If you get a top seed, you're 2 games away.
Yeah, the wins in your sales, you have the momentum.
Yeah,
I could see it.
Yeah, so that's my hot take. I think this is going to be like a big, this is like a turning point potentially for these teams. So it's going to be really interesting to see.
I would say right now Heretics is more likely to do this than Carmine, but
yeah,
I think
I can see it both ways. I mean, obviously you're more critical of Carmine than I am, but I mean, this is the thing. Eng stuff does work, right? We can say it's easy to anti, but Eng stuff, like it's a strong playbook, it's good coaching, obviously. When he builds up, he's always been good. So we'll see. But that's my hot take. So now it's time for your hot
I've got a
take.
banger.
Okay.
Mine is GE fighting.
Yeah.
I think GE is going to qualify to a LAN. Not only playoffs, which would be the first for them. I think they're going to qualify to a LAN, and I think they're going to do good. I'm not sure which one it is. I don't think they'll qualify for both. Or maybe they will, actually. I'm not sure. Maybe if they qualify for London, they'll qualify for champs. But I think this GE roster is actually very, very good. It reminds me a lot of the team we built in Vitality on the last year, where Frost has just managed to convince a bunch of really good players to join a team that maybe they wouldn't have in the past, or an organization they wouldn't have in the past. Like, if you look at the names there, you've got Patman, who is obviously literally won a Masters last year, and he wasn't definitely not slouched during that tournament. You have Autumn, who was incredibly good for FPX most of the time. Not sure exactly why he left or what the reasoning was, but I don't think anyone would have said that he should have left FPX or shouldn't be in FPX.
An underrated player who just happens to be stuck in that region, basically.
Yeah, Autumn has always been an amazing player. You have Crystal, who was obviously a big part of that team that qualified. I forget the name. It was Nova, I think, right? The team who qualified into Ascension. What was it, Nova, or was it? I forget the name of the team, but obviously a massive player. Sealight. He was
part Sealight, yeah.
Yeah, and he's obviously the one they had to cut, right, because of the import rules. Yeah, so, and then you have Udotan and Xavi, who are, I'm not sure, I mean, half of these pickups, I would say Xavi and I think Crystal were last year's pickups, right, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I believe so, because they had that free Filipino roster, right?
Yeah, but this team is low-key, and I think Frost is, at this point, he's a very experienced coach.
Javi and Autumn were this year. And
okay. So and then the other two, Crystal and Udotan, won it last year.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think Frost as a coach has now qualified to quite a few LANs with teams that maybe weren't the best and did more with less resources, let's say. I think coaches that do that always have my eye, where if you can always consistently do more with less, then you're, in my opinion, a better coach than maybe someone who has a super team and just wins, like it's whatever. So yeah, I think GE is going to qualify to a LAN. I think they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be the best. I don't think they need time and probably... Yeah, I don't want to wish for a change on anyone. I think all those players are great, but most teams are one change away from actually winning things, or two changes away from winning things. But I think that team can do really well, and I think also apac is in a weird spot right now where, you see Gen.G dropping maps, PRX dropping maps, Nongxin dropping maps to everyone's dropping maps to everyone. I think a team like GE will benefit from a scene like that where there isn't just 2 or 3 teams just crushing everyone, right? So yeah, I think GE is going to qualify to a LAN, and I also think that they will do well at that LAN, but I'm not sure how well.
I mean, it would be... I think, to be fair, you get top 6 any LAN, you're happy with that usually, yeah. So
yeah, if you're GE, you should be over the moon. So I think... I think it's going to be interesting what happens in playoffs, but I think Frost has it at this point where he's done it a few times with that, I forget their name, Talon team. Talon. Yeah. Where, that team moved on to which org?
Full Sense,
right. How are they doing, actually?
They had a
mixed bag as well.
Mixed bag. They had like they had an okay kickoff, but lost 3 in a row to drop down. Basically, didn't get to the best of 5s. they've done okay. And then
Correct me if I'm wrong, also, but under Frost, they were also a lot more consistently towards the top with him. They qualified to quite a few lands, didn't they?
Yeah, well, I don't think they qualified. I'm not sure if they qualified for lands. I think they were like the entire thing was they were always on the edge, basically.
They definitely qualified to champs because I remember them playing as Vitality.
Yeah. So they qualified for champs in 24. In 25, they didn't get to a land, but it was like they were so close every time. Basically, like they got to third place in Pacific Stage 2. They kind of got screwed by the points essentially. Pacific Stage 1, a little bit less close, and then kickoff is kickoff, right? Like they got close every time last year. It's always been a thing where Frost just basically struggles to. That team was always on the edge basically, but they shouldn't even been close. So.
Yeah, so I do think G is going to qualify. So G fighting.
Okay, that's a spicy take. I mean, to be fair, also looking at their this is not going to be an easy run-in for them for this one as well, either, to be fair, because they are playing against DRX, PaperX, and Nongshim back to back.
I can see them sneaking 2 of those wins, but watch them lose 3 in a row now that I've predicted them to qualify.
4-1, got it on the board, put it on the board. That's the spicy take. Good stuff. Okay, so I think that's where we're going to leave it this week. I think a little bit longer than last week, but bear with us. We're figuring out the format still. Hopefully entertaining. Please leave your comments. Please leave your likes. Please let us know what you think, what we can do. Again, we're still filling it out. So hope you enjoyed. And yeah, see you next week. Probably, like I said, we'll probably release this on Tuesday next week just to, because we're going to record on Monday, just to make sure we get to the late games in North America. But yeah, see you then.